Francis Ngannou, man. I mean, first of all, apologies for my voice if it sounds kind of way. I do have a cold right now, and I should be resting, but I just really wanted to make this video because, man, what I saw last night, bro, I can't be calm about that. I really needed to make this video. So, let's talk about it. Francis Ngannou versus Renan Ferreira. And, many doubters said Francis couldn't do it. They said he couldn't do it on the night. Many said he was going to lose because this time he didn't have the size and the power advantage. I mean, Renan Ferreira had almost all the advantage over him. He didn't have the size advantage, he didn't have the weight advantage, he didn't have the reach advantage, he didn't have the height advantage. And they also said because he's been away from MMA for 3 years and now he's 38 and probably past his prime. But people forget, like, John Jones similarly spent 3 years away from the UFC, came back at 37 and made easy work of Cyril Gane, one of the most exciting heavyweights at the time. But then, of course, I agree MMA math doesn't work that way, but man, this is Ngannou we're talking about here, so I don't know why people were just so quick to write him off, but I'm just so glad he made all his haters and doubters look silly last night, Conor McGregor included. I just had to put that there. I wouldn't entirely blame people for writing Ngannou off, though I know the recent boxing defeats really factored into people counting him out. And what people fail to understand is, in a boxing ring, Francis Ngannou is fish out of water. Apart from the fact that the MMA style of boxing doesn't really translate in an actual boxing ring, we all know that even at the height of his reign in the UFC, Francis Ngannou wasn't like the best technical boxer. The power was a huge factor for him. So, of course, you'd expect him to go into an actual boxing ring and struggle. You would expect him to struggle in that. And the fact that he wasn't even debuting and fighting against average fighters or fighters on the come-up, he was fighting against former world champions, certified Hall of Famers, the best of the best in boxing. The fact that he did that itself is an achievement. You can't say because he lost against Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, two of the greatest boxers of their generation. You can't say because of that he's washed, he's done. And that was why, after watching him defeat Renan Ferreira yesterday night, I made a tweet saying Francis Ngannou was made for the octagon. You see, that boxing thing was a fantasy. I'm glad he got to live and also at the biggest stage possible. But I never want to see that man fighting outside of an octagon for the remainder of his career. The octagon, that's his natural habitat, that's his home, and that's where I really want to see him fight for the rest of the career. If you look at the Ngannou in the Anthony Joshua fight and the Ngannou in this fight, those were two different fighters. So now let's talk about the fight itself. Now, there was a point in this fight before Ngannou took the fight to the ground where we see both Renan and Francis swing power punches and miss. Renan threw his first, he missed, and Ngannou threw a counter and they both missed. And for me, that moment right there is the clearest representation of how this fight was supposed to go. We're supposed to see two power punchers go crazy trying to put their opponent's light out, but ultimately that was not how the fight ended. And I'm not a betting man, so I don't follow the betting odds and all that, but I'm sure the odds of this fight not ending by knockout must have been really high because, man, this is Francis Ngannou and Renan Ferreira we are talking of. These are both fighters known for crazy knockouts. So, going into the fight, it wasn't expected to be a high-level technical boxing fight. This was expected to be we both throw crazy power punches, and whoever connects first takes the W. And on the feet, honestly, the fight was a 50-50. Believe me, had Renan Ferreira connected with the punch I referenced earlier, the fight would have very likely ended at that point. And similarly, when Ngannou threw his counter after Renan misses, if he had also connected, the fight probably have ended at that point. But here's the thing. Ngannou clearly respected the power coming from Renan Ferreira, and he was also very aware that that power gave Renan Ferreira a shot at victory against him. So what Ngannou did was he opted to take that power away from him, the same way he did to Cyril Gane when he took away his speed and mobility by taking him to the ground. That way, Renan Ferreira's greatest shot at victory was already taken. And if you remember clearly, if you watch the fight, you remember that in the earlier parts of the fight, we see Renan Ferreira really trying to lure Francis Ngannou in. He was waiting for Francis, to throw something wide and then leave himself open, and then he was hoping to land a counter punch. At some point in the fight, we saw Renan Ferreira, he dropped his hand completely. All these tactics just to lure Francis to do something reckless, leave himself open and get countered. But then Francis was a step ahead of him on the night, and what a smart move by Francis to take the fight to the ground, because that was what made the difference in this fight. Another big moment from the fight I'd love to comment on was when Renan put Francis Ngannou in a triangle choke. I wouldn't lie, my heart started racing at that point. I really thought, man, what has Ngannou done to himself? But then the way Ngannou just stayed calm and kept his composure, very demure. Just kidding. But the way he was, just calm throughout the process, and, he wasn't even panicking. I, on the other hand, watching him, I was panicking, but Ngannou was just calm and then, made a bit of adjustments and then got in a position where he could land some bombs on Renan Ferreira, which ultimately led to Renan Ferreira letting go of the triangle choke. This was a short fight, like most of us expected it to be. It was a very short fight. Of course, we weren't expecting to see it end on the ground. We had all expected it was going to be a very crazy knockout. And then after the fight, I started seeing a couple of tweets from MMA fans. Clearly, those fans who haven't really watched Renan Ferreira before this fight, because people started talking about Renan Ferreira like he was an absolute bomb of a fighter just because Ngannou outclassed him. And it was surprising, and it also wasn't surprising because it was just clear that these people really don't know who Renan Ferreira is. And that was why they were talking the way they were. One person even said Renan Ferreira would be unranked if he was in the UFC. I mean, how would you say Renan Ferreira would be an unranked heavyweight in the UFC? That's so impossible. Personally, I can count like 5 fighters that I believe he will be ranked above, definitely, and even probably 4 or 5 more that he would arguably be ranked above, or they will just be in that range. So by my own estimation, worst case, Renan Ferreira would be a top 10 heavyweight in the UFC, and then that's the worst case, and then at the best, I'll put him like top 5, top 6 in the UFC. But this just goes to show how impressive of an heavyweight Francis Ngannou is, to make a fighter of Renan Ferreira's caliber, look like a bomb to people. Of course, people who haven't watched him, but then, he just made it look so easy on the night. Like, the only offense I remember from Renan Ferreira right now was just the leg kicks, which, of course, it was Francis who even initiated those kicks before, Renan Ferreira started replying with his own leg kicks. So, yeah, Francis Ngannou, man, it's just so sad that we would never get to see Francis Ngannou against the 2 other highly ranked heavyweights in MMA right now, in the persons of John Jones and Thomas Pinal. It would have been lovely to see that fight, so, we can tell for a fact that this is the best heavyweight on the planet, but sadly, that's never going to happen. I don't see that happening. The bridge between Dana and Francis, I don't think they are ever mending it. Going back to the fight, the image after the TKO where Francis Ngannou, was just stiff, crouching behind the octagon, not moving, that image broke me, because you could see that even though he just scored a very impressive, a very big victory, the man was in pain. And, that was a very emotional image for me, just seeing him reacting to the win differently, seeing his camp coming in, supporting him. It was just an emotional sight, and it's a very painful thing, so I really wish him the best. But then, all in all, I'm just so excited to see Francis Ngannou back where he rightly belongs. And, even though there's been a bit of, I would say, like the UFC trying to paint him like he's not one of the greatest heavyweights ever. We've seen him fight. We know this thing. He is definitely one of the greatest heavyweights ever. And, he proved that last night, and he showed that he has every right to be called the best heavyweight on the planet right now. All right, there you have it. Thanks for watching this video. You can just check other videos on the channel. You're going to enjoy them. Thank you. See you in the next one. Bye.